producers Chris Harris and Joe Cristalli, and yes, executive producer, British himself, Mr. Kelsey. So, as they say in Pop 40 Radio, more rock, less talk. Let's look at a clip. We're going to go now. It's pretty clear you guys like it. You guys, as I said, Kelsey, you guys came back on October 12th. You're coming back for another, I guess we want to call it season 2, but season 13, is it? Or, yeah. Or as I like to say, it's actually season 23, because let's be honest, there's like 10 seasons we haven't seen yet, but they're going to bring them back one day. But a lot has also changed, as much as a lot has stayed the same. The character, you're loaded. You had a talk show for 10 years. You got a grown son now. Obviously, we see they're estranged, and that develops over the season, and a lot of different things. So for you coming back to this character, what changed for you doing Frasier?
Well, the assumption on my part was always that Frasier had grown, that he didn't stay the same, that he's not sort of stuck in some weird TV loop. He's an older man now. He's wiser, smarter, hopefully funnier in some ways, and a little less.
That's how you look at them, like, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to try. A little less hysterical about some things, but still, he's still a man of really honed, refined tastes, and he insists on living well. And of course, he found a way to live even better than he thought he had before. I always like to say, he went to Chicago, and there's one other famous person there who's really wealthy, and that's Oprah. So he's the next Oprah. It doesn't work so well. Anyway, I was just thinking as we watched this clip, that's the one where that joke that Jack says is about the one about putting out a fire, and he can see which one they want to talk to first. We auditioned a few wonderful actors for this role, except maybe one. And Jimmy Burrows was in on the audition, and after this young man left, he said, "You know what the problem with him is playing a fireman? He'll put the comedy out." That's only Jimmy Burrows can say something.
Well, let's talk about that, because James Burrows, of course, one of the most successful directors of television ever. Someone you have worked with for many, many years. My understanding is coming back for season 2 to visit.
Yeah, he'll be directing the first 2 episodes, just like he directed the first 2 episodes of the first season.
Well, then you gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what is that like for you? First, I'd like to ask you what it's like for you, because I'm assuming you and Jimmy have a shorthand at this point.
We have a great shorthand. We actually got a shorthand almost immediately, because he's a son of a famous theater director, Abe Burrows, and writer and songwriter and all kinds of stuff. I mean, Abe Burrows was extraordinary. Guys and Dolls, Pajama Game, some big shows, and Jimmy comes from that history. And Jimmy was always a little tortured by the idea that he was the son of a really famous director. I once gave him an award where I said, it's not how you get a name, it's how you keep it. And James Burrows keeps that name beautifully. He's an amazing guy, and we just, it's like I say this about a few people in my life. We met, we fell in love. It just happens sometimes, and you know that you've got somebody that's going to last for your entire lifetime as a friend, and that's who he is. And in terms of working together, it's extraordinary. He has, we acquired this, and we did this one years ago about when I was talking about how Rebecca on Cheers had lured me onto the rocks of her desires, and he said, and I was talking because I was telling Bibi, but I was telling Lilith about that. She wanted to go home, scratch her eyes out and all that stuff. But Jimmy said, Kels, when you say that line, I said, oh yeah, right, I got it. And so this drew me to the rocks. It's all silly stuff, anyway.
I mean, there's also something about, he's obviously the greatest to ever do it, but the thing I love most is he quickly made me his punching bag, which I took as a great sign of respect. He found out I lived in Buffalo, and he will routinely be shocked that we have phones in Buffalo.
Electricity?
Yeah, electricity. I can even get to LA on those big flying machines to work on productions, but he's just so happy to be on set, and he's so good at it and so well respected. It's probably why the show, huge credit first to Kelsey, obviously, but the second reason that everything moves so smoothly. It doesn't move slowly with Jimmy.
You are getting ready to proceed.
My friends, yes. It moved so smoothly because he came in and was doing the same thing. It was the same thing as the first time around, and everyone felt good. And it's just we're putting on a play. It's nice long scenes. Kelsey commands the audience with like a look or a wink, and Jimmy's just cackling in the background, screaming "Good job, honey!" And it's just the best environment to be in.
Really? Good job, honey?
And he calls everybody honey, yeah.
That's more than a shorthand, Kelsey.
Well, maybe so.
I don't know. He called me honey. I think the low bar.
You're also a punching bag.
That's true.
So for Christopher, for both of you guys, you know, Frasier is an icon as a show, as a character. I mean, it's one of those things, you know, like, yeah, exactly. Like, you know, and a multi-generational as well. So coming in for the return of that, what were some of the challenges for you guys?
The first challenge was getting to sleep each night, because there's such a pressure to bring back. Like this is one of the most famous characters in television, so we really wanted to make sure we got it right. And like Kelsey was saying, there's a balance to strike between the things that we know and love about the character, but also making sure that they weren't frozen in amber. They weren't like put out in a closet and brought back after 20 years. This character's changed and gone through things. So a lot of it was making it feel real, because these are characters, and this is a world that it means a lot to people, and finding that world as we build a new world around this character that makes sense. And it was Kelsey's idea at some point through the process, and it was a long process. That joke that Kelsey referenced, Joe makes a joke that when we thought of that joke, he had 0 children and now he has 4. So this was a very long process along the way. But part of Kelsey's idea, for example, was to go back to Boston. Originally, we had talked about other cities, and that just felt right. Like it's a returning home. There's something comforting to that. And so, you know, every step along the way, we took our time to make sure that we had that right decision that felt right for the character.
And the other big part was we knew we couldn't replicate the old show. The old show is arguably one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, if not the greatest. So you can't definitely laugh at that. And we do get grandfathered in for credit on the we can take credit for that too. But we're not going to replicate it. You can't have somebody doing a David Hyde Pierce impression. You can't have someone doing a John Mahoney impression. We need new characters that stood on their own, that faced and were foils to Kelsey's Frasier in a new way, in a fun way. And I think we found that in a lot of ways with new energies and new dynamics that we haven't seen, because we would have been foolish to try and just, we can't replicate it. We can try and get real close, and hopefully we are, but it just takes a lot of work.
But part of that too is you know, as I joked earlier, like after his TV host career, Frasier has a lot of money now. But now, of course, you're now lecturing at Harvard. And one of the things that struck me when I was watching the return season, I'll call it, is I felt in those scenes with you, I felt I saw you as the theater actor you used to be. Because you're in these, I mean, I'll say auditorium, obviously it's a set, but like they're younger actors and stuff, and you're interacting with them. What is that like for you? And does that give you more juice?
Well, it's, yeah, I mean, juice. Yeah, you do get off on having new characters around, new energy, new life. I mean, and you do get off on having young people around, and the idea that it's a bit more of a sort of a proscenium arch, the show, when he's in his classroom with all those wonderful minds, and the idea that he's shaping minds, and he's now an educator, and I think that really turns him on. But it's this idea of going back to Boston, really, it just sort of hit us one day that it was the right thing to do, because Frasier is he's got unfinished business in Boston, which we sort of discovered. Now, there are some things he still needs to put to rest that even he wasn't aware of, but he had an image of himself, how he would do in Boston. And he did okay, but he got jilted, he had 2 divorces, he hung out in a bar for too long.
Some people would say not too long.
Not long enough for some, but it's like his life needs to go back to the beginning in a way, for him to be able to fulfill his fantasy. There's this old thing that the Rosicrucians do. It's a very old thing. I did this myself. I felt like I lost in Manhattan at one point, and when I returned to Manhattan after going to San Diego, I went to San Diego and worked at the Shakespeare Festival for 3 years. When I got back to Manhattan, I went to every building that made me feel small. And I thought, I'm going to beat them. And it was an amazing thing for me, because I used to try to get a Debbie Brown casting building all the time. It was like 57th Street. And I dropped off my photo about 300 times. And they said, just slide it under the door, please. kill this place. But the great irony was, so I stood there on New Year's Eve one night, and I stood in front of that building, and I thought, no, you don't own me anymore. I own you. I'm done with this. And what's really funny is, thank you, thanks. It's very helpful to try that to do. Well, what's great was, so I put all those ghosts to bed, and that's what I want Frasier to do. But what happened was, somebody was looking for an old headshot of Kelsey Grammer in a subsequent production, like 20 years later, and they found it at Debbie Brown's. I was like, yeah.
To take a serious note, Kelsey, you know, one of the things that kicks off this season, of course, is the death of Frasier's father.
Yeah.
And of course, John was a huge part of the show. He definitely did. And that's something we see in those opening episodes, the two of you guys dealing with that, you and your son dealing with that. Is that something, you know, it's a very interesting choice to set off a show. It's obvious for some reasons, obviously, but that showed another side of him. And that's why I said that sometimes is, you know, you laugh, you cry, you take stock, and then you laugh again with Frasier. There is a balance there. You know, I guess maybe it's the original dramedy, in a way.
Right.
For you guys, how is that balance continuing, and what do you do to keep that balance?
Yeah, I mean, so much of the original show, and I'm going to steal one of Kelsey's lines, is that Frasier, you know, always leads with his heart. He's always been a very emotional and loving person. And one of the things going through that first season was realizing, or really not even realizing, but just coming to understand there's so much love and affection for these characters. These are characters that, this is a world that people grew up with, the world that we grew up with, and a world that we love, and we need to make sure that we respect and honor that. And John Mahoney is just a part of that, but such a big part of it. And we want to, some of the best moments of the, you know, we love the comedy, we love the hoisting and all the, like, people getting their just desserts and everything. But the best moments of the first season to us were some of those serious emotional moments where you really see these two people. Here's the father and the son, you know, struggling. They both want a connection, but they can't quite figure out how to get there. And that's real, and I think that's what we think makes the show resonate the most.
It's also what makes the best multicams. I mean, you have an ace in your hand, you play it. Kelsey is he has a theater background. He has, like, that emotion isn't false. It's not, at no point did you think, oh, how do you do that? How do you put that? He's so good, and when you can have actors, because in lesser hands, that's a schmaltzy scene that can get sacred very quickly, but with the real visceral emotion, it just makes all the comedy pop harder, and you earn it, and you care about these characters. The reason you cared about so much of those original Frasier characters is because they had so much emotion, and you felt for them. And if we can feel the same way for Frasier, Freddie, Alan, Olivia, Eve, David, the same way, or at least get close, we're in great shape.
Well,
I have to ask you guys, because we're going to go soon. What can you tell us about season 2? Because everybody's thinking there's some people coming back. Yes, that's right. Call out. They're here. Use your power. Use your power.
if he would come back, we would probably find a way to do that. But, you know, it probably wouldn't be for more than an episode. We quite artfully, we decided, I realized early on that Frasier had never really had a friend on Cheers or Frasier. He always just had his brother. That was his go-to guy, right? So it became interesting for us to explore the idea that he would have a best friend, someone we'd never really known about, who happened to live in England most of the time and ended up at Harvard teaching, who is, you know, Nicholas Lyndhurst, down in Cornwall, who is probably one of the most remarkable actors who's ever lived, and having him meet a brand new audience in America has been a great surprise for a lot of people. They go, who was that funny guy? How did they find an Englishman that old who knows how to act? He's basically a national treasure in the UK, and there's a reason for it. And I always say to the other actors that come on the show, don't turn your back on this guy. He'll steal any scene he can. And he's great to work with.
And for, you know, season 2, hopefully, if the cards line up, we get some fan favorites back. Because I mean, I'm a super fan myself. So anytime you can see, and I'm not saying we're getting these people, but you know, you get to see Bulldog or Gil or BB Glazer. Like, if you get to see them again, it's great.
You said their names.
I have said their names. Now it doesn't mean anything. I've said all their names. I can say more names.
Don't attach any importance to it.
No importance to it. I'm just saying, in general, there's a lot of fan favorites that I think would be great to get back if we can.
Thank you so much, guys.